r/AskReddit. What was once called a conspiracy theory, but is now known as true today. CIA putting LSD in the water supply, except it was only a handful of extremely small, under 800 population, towns in the American Southwest, and the outcome was not, we have a mind control serum, but instead, that deeply troubled a lot of rural elderly people, who had no idea what was happening to them. Hillsborough disaster in England 1989. Bad crowd management at a football match by the police. Overcrowding led to a crush with 97 dead and 766 injured. The police covered up their responsibility and blamed the fans until a second report in 2016 held the police responsible. The FBI sent a letter to Martin Luther King Jr. telling him he should kill himself. Happy Black History, folks. Atari dumped a bunch of unsold games into a landfill in New Mexico. Even former employees of Atari constantly denied it, but it was actually revealed to be true around 2014. MKUltra. Basically they were doing a bunch of experiments using various devices, drugs and psychological tactics to try to determine if mind control is real in any way. I believe the results were mixed, to say the least. Like, one story I know of is one test subject of MKUltra merely got his beliefs torn down by an interrogator and went on to become the Unabomber. The UK not cleaning up properly after their nuclear tests in Australia. I read a pretty good interview with an indigenous guy who saw a test. It was really upsetting. They were so awed by the explosion, and then they ran into a load of dead kangaroos. They thought the gods had blessed them with food, but after eating the kangaroos they fell victim to radiation poisoning. I don't know if any studies have been done about cancer and birth defect rates in those communities, but I can only assume it was horrible. Tuskegee Syphilis Study. From 1932 to 1972, the US Public Health Service conducted a study on the natural progression of untreated syphilis in rural African American men in Alabama under the guise of free healthcare, without their informed consent. The men were not told they had syphilis, nor were they treated for it even after penicillin became the standard treatment in 1947. This should be required learning in history class, along with the Tulsa Massacre of 1921. A lot of people grow up clueless about race relations in the US aside from slavery and a very sanitized version of the civil rights movement. The fact that Japanese citizens had disappeared because North Korea had kidnapped them. One of the victims was 13 when she was kidnapped. Her parents devoted the rest of their lives to reunite with their daughter, but the dad passed away a few years ago without ever getting the chance to see her again. His passing was pretty big news at the time. The kidnappings are still an ongoing issue, since some of the victims are believed to be alive in North Korea. Edit clarified that both parents were heavily involved with trying to get their daughter back, but that the dad died recently, adding more details below. As some people have mentioned, the 13-year-old's name is Megumi Okota, and she is from the area of Niigata, which is on the Sea of Japan side. The abducted Japanese citizens were ordinary people that were used to teach Japanese to North Korean spies for them to blend in. In Megumi Okota's case, it's hypothesized that she might have witnessed some secret North Korean activity, and so she was kidnapped to stay quiet. If that's the case, it makes a little sense why North Korea returned other Japanese citizens but not her, and insists that she's dead. There was a North Korean spy, Kim Hyun-hui, who defected after a botched bombing of a Korean Airlines flight in Bahrain, and she confessed to being taught by one of the abductees, Yuko Tagachi. Tagachi was a single mom of a 3 and 1-year-old who was kidnapped after dropping her kids off at a daycare. She was 22 years old. Tagachi was forced to teach Japanese to the North Korean spy, and it's reported that she often wept when talking about how much she missed her kids. The Japanese government officially recognizes 17 people abducted. However, the National Police Agency recognizes 871 missing person cases from the period when the kidnappings occurred, where abduction cannot be ruled out. We may never find out exactly how many people were kidnapped, since North Korea is unlikely to confess ever again. Someone also pointed out that Japan is not the only country to be victimized. South Korea has the unfortunate title of having the most abduction cases at around 3,800. However, I'm not as familiar with those cases. Operation Snow White, Church of Scientology infiltrated the IRS to ensure their tax exemption. How long before this comment goes? Comment deleted. It's kind of niche, but in Iraq and Afghanistan we were being made to take anti-malarial drugs. The thing was that different units didn't have to, while others were, and the kind of drug taken was different. We took ours once a week, and we referred to it as Psycho Tuesday, because after taking the drug people would become irritable, aggressive, and angry. There would be fist fights over stupid shit and people would have really weird nightmares. You'd walk through the habitation unit and people would be talking in their sleep or sleepwalking. We were told this was due to combat fatigue, but it turns out we were part of an experiment. Some units had been issued uniforms treated in a long-term mosquito repellent, while others were given various anti-malarial drugs. They wanted to see which measures were most effective. The mental disturbances we experienced were a side effect of the particular anti-malarial we had been given. People suffered hearing loss, liver damage, and long-term mental effects from it. These side effects are similar enough to issues created by PTSD and traumatic brain injury from blast exposure that most affected don't realize their health issues are from an involuntary drug trial. The US government has stopped issuing that malaria drug, but yeah. TLDR, was an unwitting human guinea pig in a government experiment and it almost made me crazy. I and a lot of others made the connection and dodged taking the pills, or cheeked them, and spit them out later, so luckily dodged the long-term effects. Others still suffer though. The sugar industry painted fat as the culprit behind all heart disease and obesity. Sadly they are still getting away with it, for the most part. They literally created the modern Western diet and ingrained, no pun intended, the belief that sugars and somehow starches, quickly converted to sugar then excess to body fat, are cool, but naturally occurring fat is not. Anyone seen the food pyramid many generations grew up learning? No mention of the post offices here in the UK. Hundreds convicted, families and careers destroyed, all because of dodgy computers that were known to be dodgy for years, but it was all covered up by the post office. The descendant organizations that built and owned the Titanic denied it broke in half while sinking, until the wreck was found in 2 pieces. I have no idea why none of the original engineers or proprietors were still around. But as recent as the late 1970s and early 80s, survivors who said it broke were dismissed as suffering from delusions brought on by hypothermia. Despite no direct involvement, the contemporary lineage of White Star and Harland and Wolff were adamant there was absolutely no way it could have broke the way it did. Then Ballard found it, and the denial never spoke of it again. Car companies buying and dismantling tram companies, which directly led to the inefficient mass transit systems many US cities have today and urban sprawl. That time the United States military conducted secret chemical testing on unsuspecting residents of a predominantly black and low-income housing complex in St. Louis. The Prutigo housing development was one of a number of sites across the US chosen for testing where the Army would release particles of zinc cadmium sulfide. Prolonged or repeated exposure to which can cause cancer and damage to internal organs. I used to tell people they were releasing updates to slow our phones down on purpose, so that we'd have to go out and buy new ones. They told me I was paranoid and that my phone was slowing down because it was just getting old. That's not how processors work. Eventually they officially got caught and tried to spin it off as we're doing it to save your battery life. Now it's just accepted and you're supposed to throw out your phone and buy a new one every 3 years indefinitely. Yay capitalism. Planned obsolescence. Our products are designed to break or wear out before it's necessary, with the best engineering and production techniques, in order to create more sales. The Phobos cartel was an international organization which controlled light bulb sales worldwide and made sure they wouldn't last more than like 2,000 hours. The engineers actually had more difficulty accomplishing this than they had creating a better light bulb. The Centennial light has allegedly been burning for 121 years. Oh, guess what? It's not just light bulbs, and it hasn't stopped whatsoever. I know Alex Jones is crazy, but he was telling people about Epstein Island 20 plus years ago and infiltrated Bohemian Grove and documented it when they all said it was a crazy conspiracy. Pretty much everything America did I personally love the CIA director's cuts when they reveal all the good stuff officially, so conspiracy nerds can check the bingo charts on how much they missed out. Sadly, we won't get the details on Kennedy for a good while. The CIA went ahead and reopened the investigation a couple years ago, so it's going to be another 50 years until that becomes unclassified. If the documents haven't been burned by then, that is. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.